Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm very excited to have you guys on tonight. I'm going to go ahead and intro you, Eli. So I have some cheat sheet notes because there's a laundry list for you. So thanks, guys, for being on tonight. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background about Eli before we get started. So he is an Olympic modern pentathlete, which includes fencing, swimming, horseback riding, running, and shooting. He's a member of the U.S. Olympic team in 2008, the 2008 Games in Beijing. He's a three-time Pan American champion, a World Cup final bronze medalist, a 12-time World Team member, World Military Games gold medalist, U.S. Air Force Academy graduate, and former U.S. Air Force major. He has his master's degree from George Washington University and the University of Colorado. And I think this is super cool. He was featured in the National Geographic feature film, The Incredible Human Machine. He's considered one of the fastest short distance run swim athletes in history. And he is currently the captain of the Shaklee peer performance team. And he's presented to over 200,000 people worldwide. And tonight, I'm so pumped that he's going to talk about what he knows best, which is how to fuel properly for your workouts and, most importantly, recover from them. So we don't think about that a lot of times. So Eli, without further ado, I'll let you talk and speak about Ismael as well.
Yeah. So actually, I'm going to start by introducing Ismael Hernandez, who's on the call here as well. He's one of our panelists. Ismael, I've known for a long time. I don't know quite when we met Ismael. It must have been north of 10 years ago.
2007, 2008, more or less? Yeah.
Somewhere around there. So we come from the same sport. Ismael's also a modern pentathlon athlete. Went to the 2016 Olympics in Rio and won a bronze medal there. And we're very proud to have brought him on to Shaklee ahead of that. And Ismael and I had many conversations talking about nutrition. And Shaklee helped power Ismael to an Olympic bronze medal, one of 5, if I'm not mistaken, for Mexico. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And now Ismael is halfway through his master's in business at Duke, which is one of the top MBA programs in the world. He just completed an internship at Shaklee, and he's still working with us. And hopefully going to be doing a lot more work with us as we move forward on sports marketing and our sports line. So I asked him to come onto the call tonight, and he might want to jump in here on occasion. I don't know if he's going to be able to stay on the whole time, but real honor to have one of the top athletes I've ever worked with, involved with Shaklee. And we've got 93 Olympians, and I always try to bring Ismael on because he's just top notch, and we're looking forward very much to a broad future with him. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and jump in. And Ismael, if you've got some comments, feel free to do this. So what I'm going to do, Cindy, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here.
Yep.
And as soon as this opens up, you'll have to just make sure this is showing what I think it's showing. Is it showing a PowerPoint presentation now?
It is.
Excellent. Is it full screen or is it showing a split screen?
Full screen.
Excellent. Okay, so it's showing correctly.
Yep.
All right. So this presentation I put together in conjunction sort of with the new launch of our sports line. A lot of this came because, I competed at the world level for over 10 years. And in talking to other, top athletes, I realized how little information people actually had about sports physiology and some very, very fundamental things that, quite frankly, can help anybody with their workout. So I worked with a few real top scientists on this. We tried to boil the ocean and come down to a program that would actually make sense for whether it's the elite athlete or the person who's just training every day or a weekend warrior. So we're going to start by asking a question: what actually happens when you work out? We're going to look at 2 different systems here, but I want to start with our energy system. Most of you, if you've been to a gym lately or ever, you've probably seen this slide here, and it shows like the various different energy systems that you go through. They always have different names, but it's the same basic idea. You kind of start at the bottom. If you look on the left-hand side, actually, it'll show your heart rate in beats per minute as a percentage of your maximum, and on the top, sort of on the x-axis, it shows your age, and then kind of below that, your maximum heart rate. So generally speaking, we sort of accept that your maximum heart rate is about 220 beats a minute minus your age. So, if you're 20, it's about 200, 30, it's 190, 40, it's 180, and so on. So Ishmael's about 10 years younger than me, so his max heart rate is going to be about 10 beats per minute more. Ishmael, what's your max heart rate, by the way? Do you know it? You got to come off mute, man. Ishmael, you're on mute.
There you go. My maximum heart rate right now, it should be around 200. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 200.
So it's not an exact science, but it's going to be ballpark that. So some people, Ishmael's slightly higher. Mine's actually slightly higher than this also. But that gives you a sort of a good idea of what a training zone looks like. As you go up about 10% per zone, you move from light activity to sort of a low aerobic to a high aerobic. And then you go to your anaerobic or lactic acid threshold and then VO2 max. What's really important here is to recognize that as you go up, I guess I don't have a cursor on this. As you go up through the zones, your heart rate's going to increase as you go up through the zones. And we're going to look at what else is happening, and that starts on this slide right here. So a lot of people are confused about what these activities are. So I've given some examples. So a light activity might be a brisk walk. Remember, this is like 50 to 60% of your maximum heart rate. So it's not, it's not like walking around the house. It's a brisk walk. Let's look at the primary energy sources that are being used here. That's going to be blood glucose and fat. And you're going to burn between 1 to 200 calories per hour on the margin. So that's in addition to your base metabolism. So a female who's going to the gym every day might have a base metabolism of 1,700 calories a day. An elite male athlete, Ishmael's, I don't know if you've ever been tested, but I'm guessing you're in the 22 to 2,400 calories a day, or calories a day. So is that about right?
Before Olympics, I used to have 2,600 calories a day.
Base metabolism, and that's wonderful because you can eat anything you want and you don't put on any weight. But that has to do with a lot of other factors. That's very unusual. A typical moderately active male might be 2,000 calories a day of base calories. So in addition to that, about 80 calories an hour, which is probably what you're burning in base metabolism, you're burning 1 to 200 calories an hour using your light activity sort of system. The next level would be something akin to jogging. And during this phase, you're going to be burning through your blood glucose. You're going to start burning a little bit of something called glycogen, not a whole lot, and fat. And now you're burning maybe 300 to 500 calories an hour. And we'll call this the low aerobic zone. Aerobic, of course, is done with oxygen. Then we go to something like moderate running. So maybe, for most people, jogging might be 11-minute mile pace, and maybe running would be around 9-minute mile pace, just ballpark. Differently based on how athletes are trained, obviously. But your primary energy source here is going to be, you're going to have consumed carbohydrates, glycogen, and fat. So the reason why we change from blood glucose to consumed carbohydrates is about the time that you're really working into the system. You've probably cleared most of your blood glucose out that you had at the beginning. So if you ate ahead of time, that becomes blood glucose. So that's the mechanism for that. But it's really, when you're working out in this stratus here, in the high aerobic stratus, you've got, if you consume carbohydrates, you're going to burn those. If you're going to burn more of this compound called glycogen that we're going to get into in a minute, and then fat. The next two would be like hard interval running. And here we're only going to burn glycogen and consume carbohydrates. We're not going to burn fat. That's sort of the definition of anaerobic. You need oxygen to burn fat. Look at the calories on the right-hand side there, 900 to 1,200 calories an hour. This is why actually Ishmael would burn, at a base metabolic rate of 2,600 calories, probably about where I was when I was close to his age as well, because your metabolism is really jacked up from doing this type of a workout. And then the last one would be an all-out sprint. That's a VO2 max. This is an unsustainable level of effort. I put down an estimated 1,500 calories, could be 2,000 calories an hour. You can only do this for maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes, and then you basically fall apart. And you notice there that our only energy source really is glycogen. So interestingly enough, if you look at the lower three levels, you'll notice that you burn fat in all of those. And if you go back about 20 to 30 years, in fact, I was on the treadmill today and I was noticing on the treadmill, it said fat burning zone. Physiologists used to suggest if you want to lose fat, work out at a lower level because that's your fat burning zone. And and they're technically correct. In those lower zones, you are burning fat as an energy source. But we also know if you want to lose weight, you need a caloric deficit, right? And so you're not burning nearly as many calories. And so we now actually know that working out at the harder interval rates actually produce better results both athletically and for weight loss. So if someone says, hey, well, don't work out hard because you're not burning fat, that's technically true, but it actually doesn't take into account the caloric requirements for working out at higher levels. So let's talk about glycogen now. Glycogen is the stored carbohydrate energy source in the human body. We don't really, when was the last time you were at the gym and someone's like, oh man, my glycogen supplies are low? Like, we don't talk about this much. It's not a highly understood phenomenon because you can't see it, you can't touch it. But I tell you, if you work out a lot, you can sure as heck feel it. It is sort of the jet fuel of human propulsion, if you will, for how to work really hard. I'll use sort of Ismael as an example here. That I was actually the NBC commentator calling his race in Rio, and if we were looking at the analysis of the energy he's using, the last discipline is 4 times an 800-meter run with about a 12-second shoot in between each one. So the first round, Ismael's probably in high aerobic, I'm guessing. He's burning through fat and some glycogen. The second round, we're probably getting anaerobic. Third round, anaerobic. And the fourth round is VO2 max, okay? And he's burning glycogen pretty much all the way through, and you get done and you fall apart because you have no more glycogen left in the tank. So that's what you're using this for, is that super high octane, speedy kind of workout. Dr. Gennady Sokolovas is one of the world leading experts, probably the world leading expert on glycogen consumption in elite athletes. He's worked with over 110 Olympic gold medalists, consults for numerous Olympic committees. He's getting on a plane tomorrow at the request of the International Swimming Federation to go work with a bunch of international coaches in Belarus. He's also our Shaklee Pure Performance Team physiologist, and we're partnering with him to lead research on how nutrition interfaces directly with lactic acid production and consumption. So let's talk a little bit more about glycogen, because in my opinion, this is one of the least understood components in exercise physiology. So you got that glycogen, as I said, it's your stored energy in your muscles, it's in your liver. It serves that function of being that really high octane fuel, but it depletes as you work out. So if you start with a full tank of glycogen in your muscle and your liver, as you work out harder, this is just an estimate. As an athlete's higher trained, they can go longer and they have a higher glycogen reserve. But the point of this is, if you work out really hard, your glycogen depletes faster than if you work out sort of at the moderate level. So picture if you're in the lactic acid threshold zone, your glycogen depletes maybe twice as fast as if you're in the high aerobic zone. And then if you notice in the other one, on the light exercise, you're not depleting your glycogen really at all. And that's because it's, as you might remember, you're really only burning fat and blood glucose. But you're not burning many calories. So the more glycogen you're burning, the more calories you are expending. That's one way to look at it. The harder you're exercising, the more glycogen you are expending. When you run out of glycogen, you actually lose the ability to train at the higher levels. You can only go into the aerobic phases. You cannot be anaerobic without glycogen or with a substantial amount of consumed carbohydrates. So that talks mostly about our energy. Now let's take a look at what's happening with our muscles. These are actually quite a bit simpler to talk about. Most people kind of get this from the beginning. This is a muscle fiber. It's got a lot of different layers and stuff, but what happens is kind of similar throughout. You get disruption, you get tearing, you get breakdown, inflammation, trauma, stress, and damage. And that's across pretty much all your muscle fibers that you're using while you work out. Don't go into too much the chemistry behind this. I'm much more interested in the general aspects of what happens to your muscles. So it's much more simple than energy. So let's quickly summarize what actually happens when you work out. Well, on the energy front, your stored energy, i.e. your glycogen, is depleted. Your muscles are torn down. and you're weaker than you were before. Okay, now I want to pause for this for 1 second. This is fundamentally true. After a workout, you are weaker than you were before the workout. So when people say, I go to the workout and I go get energized, no, you get a high from endorphins. You actually have less energy and your muscles are weaker. Okay, this is a scientific fact. And this leads us to the fundamental question, why in the heck do we work out then, right? You know, I thought we worked out to get strong, and yet you're telling me we're weaker after we work out. So the reason we do it is that stress, it does a body good. And why is that? And it's because your body naturally wants to rebuild as a result of stress. And this is true in virtually every area. If you think about astronauts who go into space and they're in a non-gravity situation and their bones are not getting pressure on them, the bones actually start demineralizing. This is the exact same response that our bodies get with working out. So we stress, the body naturally wants to rebuild. So therefore, the nutrition you consume during and after the workout has more impact on your performance than what you eat before. Very, very key here. This is one of the things that separates the truly elite athletes from, in my opinion, the sub-elite athletes, you know, your national teamers, your collegiate athletes. And I wouldn't even say all the elite athletes get this one correct, the ones that do get this correct. And Ismael, feel free to jump in here if you have got any stories you want to share. But the athletes that get this correct are absolutely the ones who work, and that's because the nutrients are the construction materials your body needs to rebuild.
Yeah. So actually, like the first time I went to my nutritionist, she explained to me this like going to the supermarket. Pretty much, when you go to the supermarket, you pick what you need, and if they are out of stock, then you pick the second best thing. The same happened with your body. With your body, when it has like the right nutrition, and then when it has the right nutrients, the right vitamins, the right minerals, then it rebuilds itself. But if it doesn't have the right things, then it starts consuming the second best thing. And the second best thing can be like tearing down your muscles apart. They start having like injury. That's why you get injured sometimes. Like sometimes the stress, the lack of recovery makes your body like grab to the second best thing. And the second best thing can be muscles, bones, the fascia, like name it. Like pretty much your body start consuming itself in order to rebuild itself, which is counterintuitive.
Ismael, how far into your career was it before you figured this out? Like
far.
Yeah.
So I figured it out. So I figured it out in 2010, more or less. But in 2010, then I had like that doping problem. So pretty much in 2010, I just started to trying some supplemental nutrition, besides like the normal food that I was ingesting. And in that moment, it was like, okay, I feel good. But then I had a problem with doping in 2010, and I got banned for 1 year. The problem with doping was because of clenbuterol, a steroid that it's used in meat usually. So the beef and the cows get fatter and thicker faster. It's a problem in Latin America. It's a problem in Mexico. So I got banned. Still, I got the substance on my system, and I got banned for 1 year. And then the big problem after that is that you get skeptical and you get more paranoid, because that was strike one. And if you have strike two, that means the end of your career as an athlete. So even though I understood it early in the game, after 2010, I was really, really skeptical and paranoid about ingesting something that could put my reputation and my athletic career on the line. So I just stopped taking any supplements and any extra nutrition. And as a result, my performance suffered. I saw like all the athletes, name them, the Hungarians, the Russians, the French guys, they were taking in the morning, in the afternoon, and then in the evening, like the pills, the powder, everything. And it was like highly scientific, but I was scared. I was not taking that. So that little gap that I needed to bridge for being a great athlete, like from the athlete to the great athlete, was the part that that nutrition played for me in 2015 and 2016 for Rio.
Let's let's come back to that in a little bit, because I want to go to the next slide, which is going to show probably what was happening to you during that time. And this is very common with athletes. Okay, this is what's fairly typical. Nutrition plays a big role in this, but athletes who work out hard, we'll call it, you work out at 100%, but you only recover at 70%. And recovery is that rebuilding process, and nutrition's, the number one, like Ismael described, it's like going to the supermarket and they don't have the right products. If your body's not recovering correctly, then you're actually not getting the total benefit of the workout. So this is how I would say the vast majority of athletes, whether they're weekend warriors, whether they're, fitness junkies, or even generally elite athletes, the super elite athletes, they tend to learn this one, but this is a problem I see almost systemically. This is actually how you want to work out. You want to still work out at 100%, but you want to rebuild and recover at 100% as well. And the reason for that is that your total benefit is the lesser of the workout and the recovery. So Ismael, let's come back to what happened in 2015, 2016. You're on mute again, by the way. And what happened when you added in things that help with your recovery?
So pretty much the way it worked is I felt better. I was able to push a little harder in trainings, even if I was tired, even if it was Friday and I had been training like the whole week for 8 hours a day. The Friday I still had energy to go, probably like not in all out, but I still had enough, and my body felt better. So, and the key thing about this is I avoided injuries. Recovery, like proper recovery, help you to prevent injuries as well. And I think that was one of the huge advantages of having Shaklee as my ally in that part of my life.
So let's we're going to come back to that story again, because I really enjoyed following that all the way through. But I want to foot stomp this again before we come back to it, that the total benefit is the lesser of the workout and the recovery. That's one of the key takeaway points. Almost every athlete I know works out very, very hard, but then they don't recover. And Ismael just described that, what happens when you don't recover. You're going to get more injuries. You're going to not rebuild and stuff like that. So now let's look at the mechanism of how we're going to rebuild our energy and our muscle systems. And we're going to use Ismael as a case study still as we keep on going through this. So what Ismael talked about was being able to rebuild everything, and we replenish our energy supplies, our glycogen supplies by consuming appropriate carbohydrates. We rebuild our muscles with consuming appropriate protein. So, I know, Ismael mentioned in about 2015, he and I connected on Shaklee, and he was able to reintroduce protein and supplementation into his diet. And so let's look at how the mechanics of how that happened. We're going to start with energy supplies. So it starts by consuming a carbohydrate. From carbohydrate it goes to your GI tract, where it is then converted into blood glucose. I'm going to pause for a minute here, because almost everybody on this call has probably heard of the craze of low carb dieting. And I want to say that is both correct and incorrect simultaneously. And I'm going to share with you why that is the case through looking at two different things. So even though this is a sports physiology presentation, it's such a popular issue right now that I want to show why you would or would not want to be on a low carbohydrate diet. So in the first instance, you're sedentary. And when you're sedentary, actually your body in either way secretes a hormone called insulin when your blood glucose is elevated. However, when you're sedentary, your body has a response to the insulin, which is that it wants to store that excess energy in the form of fat. Okay. And this is why low carbohydrate diets work for sedentary people, because it reduces your blood glucose, and then it prevents storage of fat, and then eventually you start burning fat for energy. So it actually does work for a diet. However, it does not work very well for athletes. And let's look at what happens in an athlete. So in an athlete, after a workout, you have elevated blood glucose, your body secretes insulin, and then that insulin converts it back into glycogen and stores it as glycogen, which is a carbohydrate, in your muscles and in your liver. So it actually functions completely differently. So a lot of people ask the question, are carbohydrates bad for you? And the answer is it depends on when you eat them. Okay, that's a key point here. Carbohydrates are always going to be stored as energy in your system. Okay, either they're going to be stored as glycogen or they're going to be stored as fat. They're going to become glucose, and then they're going to be stored as glycogen or fat. The question is, are you in a post-workout mode or are you in a sedentary mode? All right, let's look at how we do muscular rebuilding. And this was a big issue for Ismael because of the issue around getting proper protein in Latin America that wasn't contaminated. And that was where Shaklee partnered with him to help him out on this one. You start by consuming protein. It goes to your GI tract and your liver where it's broken into amino acids. Those amino acids enter your bloodstream, and the bloodstream carries them to the muscle. Now, your muscle does one of two things. It does both of them, actually. It rebuilds the old muscle, which has been damaged, and then it actually builds new muscle. Ismael, can you jump in real quick and describe what that felt like when you were able to start consuming protein again? Because this was, I know, a big issue for you.
So the feeling is actually feeling less sore. So it's, and here, feel free, like, to anybody who wants to interact in the chat. But you often, when you work out, you feel sore, and that's normal. That's what you just described. You are just putting a stress in your body and kind of ripping it apart in order to rebuild better. In this point, like the line that says, "It doesn't kill you, make you stronger," like it's literally true. But for me, like what happened is, I have like a really skinny composition. Like physically, I am really, really skinny. Right now, I should be weighing more or less like 150 pounds, more or less. When I was training, I was weighing like even less. I was around 140. I was really skinny, and I wasn't able to produce any muscle. My arms were skinny, my abs were skinny. Everything on me was skinny, and that was like a huge setback, especially in fencing. In fencing, it was a combat, like a direct combat with your opponent, and you wanted to have muscle, you want to have strength. So in that moment, I was not able to produce any strong reaction, any explosiveness out of my body because I didn't have the muscles. So then that's the nice part. When you start replenishing what you have used or broken, the part of rebuilding the old muscle, and then start building new muscle, then you can also start building strength. You can start building like this quick reaction that you need, for example, in fencing. And that was like a huge advantage that I ended up using in Rio.
And by the way, heart muscle is also a type of muscle that if you're not consuming appropriate protein, it will not rebuild your heart correctly. One of the takeaways on this slide is, if you notice, protein doesn't like to be stored as energy. It doesn't want to be stored as fat. It doesn't want to be stored as a carbohydrate in glycogen. So a lot of people get this confused, by the way, and they say, "Oh, I'll take protein for energy." Protein's really about rebuilding your muscle. It's not about energy. So that's an important takeaway from this slide. Again, why do low carbohydrate, high protein, high fat diets work for sedentary people? It's because it's hard to convert protein into fat. So, but for athletes, we want to convert the protein into muscle. So that's why protein consumption is important. So are all nutrients created equal? Obviously, the answer is no. This is very important also. The workout type, intensity, and duration define the individual needs. I want to pause on that for a second. Notice I didn't say the athlete defines the needs. I said the workout type, intensity, and duration define the individual needs. So the key takeaway on this is you eat to the workout, you don't eat to the athlete. Okay, so if you're doing a hard workout that is muscularly taxing, you eat it very differently than a hard workout that's more cardiovascularly taxing. So a couple of years ago, I was sort of tasked with this project to help develop a sports product that was designed for every level of athletics. And that was very difficult because you're dealing with energy, you're dealing with muscle. And so we had to figure out how the heck would we do this in such a way that you could actually tailor it, because coming from my sport and Ismael's, we're working out 3-4 times a day, and you have to get the right nutrition and afterwards. And I said, if I could find something that could be useful for our sport, which is one of the most diverse, then I think we can come up with something that works for everybody. So we launched the fitness and endurance product lines. Don't get too caught up on that. People, I sort of jokingly say it would be common sense that if you're a fitness athlete, you take the fitness products, and you're an endurance athlete, you take the endurance products. It's a little bit of a misnomer. So let's just debunk that now, and I'll explain a little bit more of how these products are actually supposed to be used. So we came up with 3 products, before, a during, and after product that would be useful for athletes. So the energized products are before, and that's about getting some caffeine in your system, something that gets your metabolism cranking. Caffeine also helps with fat metabolism. It makes fat more bioavailable for consumption in your body. What the key here to notice is you got the energize, then you got the hydrate, that's during, and then the build is what happens after. The key here on this slide is that everything on the left-hand side is low carbohydrate. Everything on the right-hand side is high carbohydrate. On the left-hand side, you're going to note a much higher protein content in our rebuild product than on the right-hand side. So these products were designed, the fitness products are more designed for strength-based athletes, which is why I'm not crazy about the term fitness. And then the endurance products were designed for more cardiovascular-based athletes. People would often get confused, and we're going to come back to the slide in a second, as to which product should I use? And the answer is actually going to wind up being both. We designed these products to be mixed together. So if we go back to our slide here that talks about the different energy levels, and you can see the different types of systems. And now you see glycogen there going up and up and up as we increase our activity. In terms of our carbohydrate consumption, I recommend you take fewer carbohydrates at the lower energy levels, and then you take more carbohydrates at the higher levels. So at the bottom, you're kind of using 100% fitness products. Why is that? We don't want to flood your body with carbohydrates if you're not burning them. Okay, and if you're walking, you're burning blood glucose, just a little bit of that, and fat. Well, no one I know wants to replenish their fat. That's never a goal of working out. You say, oh man, I want to replenish my fat supplies. So we're not concerned about that. As we get to the higher ends, you have to replenish your glycogen, or you can't reach peak workout levels. Dr. Sokolova shared with me that before the 2008 Olympics, he had been testing Michael Phelps and discovered that within a couple days of coming off their rest days, so Tuesday, Wednesday, they weren't able to reach peak levels of lactate, which is an indication for energy output. And that was because their glycogen supplies had been depleted. He put them on a much higher carbohydrate diet, and Michael was able to increase his energy output substantially in the practice. So he actually got his coach, Bob Bowman, to stop every 30 minutes, and they would do a feed every 30 minutes in the middle of the workout, and they were able to achieve much higher levels of peak lactate. And it was after that that Michael won 8 gold medals at the Olympics. So for a practical purpose, though, obviously, I don't think anyone here is going after 8 gold medals at the Olympics, but maybe some people are trying to get college scholarships or something like that. How do you synthesize this into something that works? Well, what if you're doing a hard interval run and you say, or a football practice, something like that, where you're consuming a lot of glycogen, but you're also working your muscles really hard. The products were actually designed to be blended together. So let's take it from the end first. Let's say you've just done a really hard muscular and cardio workout, and you're trying to decide, do I want the 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio that's in the endurance build, or do I want the 7-to-1 protein to carbohydrates ratio that's in the fitness build? You can actually mix the two of them together. That's the beauty of a powder, and you can get to something that's 50-50. So you could get to a 300 or a 400 calorie drink that's 50% carbohydrate, 50% protein. And now you're able to replenish your energy supplies, your stored energy supplies, but you're also giving your body enough protein to rebuild the muscles. If you feel like you used more muscle than you did your cardiovascular, you could simply add more of the pure protein powder. It's nearly a pure protein powder into your recovery drink, and you're going to get more protein to do more muscular rebuilding. You can repeat that 2 hours after if you want. That'll help. Now, if we go to the during the workout drink, let's say you're doing an easy jog and you say, I really need more than 10 calories of carbohydrates to keep going, but I don't know if I want to be taking 100 calories a serving. you can actually blend those two. You can get to a full electrolyte drink. So the electrolyte components are going to be basically the same, but you're going to have half the carbohydrates without sacrificing any of the electrolyte. And of course, you can get to anything else in between. You could, in theory, get to 70%, a 70% carbohydrate drink without sacrificing your electrolytes. So these products, it looks very simple, but it was designed to be able to hit anything on that scale of I'm working my muscles really hard. Picture a weight training practice where your heart rate's not getting terribly high, or an endurance run where you're using almost no muscle except for your heart and some of your leg muscles, and you need tons of carbohydrate to rebuild and recover. And if you give your body what it needs, it's, as Ismael so eloquently put it earlier, if you give your body what it needs, it's going to rebuild correctly. If you don't, if you go tear down your muscles and you don't give it protein, it's going to go looking for the protein from another source. If you tear down your energy supplies and you don't replenish them, it's going to go looking for it from another source, and it's going to start tearing down your body even farther. So, so that's how our bodies actually work when we work out. I'm going to do a few key takeaways, and then Cindy, I'll let you share whatever we've got in the chat box with questions. So if you got questions, go ahead and start loading them in the chat box. The key takeaways of this: the total workout benefit is the lesser of the workout or recovery. If only 99% people get this wrong, I'd be amazed that it's that few. This is something I've been guilty of it. Ismael, I'm sure you've been guilty of it, of not recovering as hard as you work out. We have a saying in the Olympics: you're never overtrained, you're under recovered. So the total workout benefit is the lesser of the workout or the recovery. That's scientific fact. Carbohydrates and proteins serve completely different purposes. Carbohydrates are about energy. That's what we burn to do our really high octane workouts. Protein is about muscle. So if you expect carbohydrates to function like proteins or proteins to function like carbs, you're not getting the most out of your performance. This has been so grossly understood in the era of low carbohydrates. And again, I approve of low carbs for most people for who are not working out, but in the athlete, carbohydrate functions differently. Consumption during and after the workout is more important than it is before. This is shocking to most people, but if you think about it, if you go back to my chart, consumed carbohydrates are a very small piece of the puzzle, but glycogen supplies are a very, very large piece. Same thing. You don't need protein ahead of time. You need it afterwards. Yes, Ismael?
I think it's good to add here how soon after workout it's important. There's a window over there after you end workout that is 15 to 20 minutes. That is where your body starts recovering. It's a peak where it starts looking. It's exactly that moment when you want to have that intake of carbohydrates or protein. So 15, 20 minutes, no more after workout. I think that's the window that you want to.
Yep. And so if you hit your post-workout recovery after, what's going to happen is you replenish your glycogen supplies, you've rebuilt your muscle. Now you're ready for the next workout. So the time to get ready for the next workout is immediately after. Like Ismael said, it's very much like a clockwork. I actually recommend you take your recovery product to the practice with you, and don't wait until you get home. Drink your recovery product at the gym so that it's bioavailable when your body needs it. So this one is so tough for people to appreciate. And I will tell you, if you want to turn your workout and your fitness around, pay tons of attention to what you eat after. And all of a sudden you're going to say, wow, I'm seeing results like I've never had. Eat till your workout afterwards, and you'll see incredible results. And then the last thing is carbohydrates act differently depending on when they're consumed. That's so important. Carbohydrates are very finicky. They want to store as energy. They'll store as fat if you're not treating them correctly, but they'll store as glycogen if you are. And if you're trying to get in shape, you can't scrimp on the carbs. I've spent so much time talking to people who go on a low-carb diet, and then they go try to do running, and they don't get the results they want. And I say, right, physiologically, you have to have carbohydrates. And you don't have to worry about it. If you're burning 1,000, 1,500 calories a day, you don't really need to worry about a low-carb diet. You have to worry about when you eat them, the quality of them, stuff like that. But you're not going to act the same as your sedentary friends. So those are my key takeaways. With that, I will turn it over to Cindy. And Cindy, if you've got questions in the chat box that we can start answering.
Yeah. So I had another question for somebody that's doing more of an endurance workout. So like more than an hour. At what point should they take a break to actually consume a product?
That's a really good question. So you don't necessarily need to take a break. I mean, my workout today, I jumped on the treadmill, and it was snowing out here in Colorado, so I had to run on the treadmill. I had my bottle of Hydrate Plus on the treadmill, and I can drink it, and it's amazing how fast that hits your system. So you don't necessarily need to stop. What's important, I mean, obviously if you're swimming or if you're, doing an activity like that, you have to stop. It's not necessarily important to stop. It is important to feed during a practice.
Right. Okay.
And I would say if you're going to do an hour, hour and 15, hour and a half practice, you probably want to start within 10 minutes of the workout so that you get that level of glucose going across. What you're going to see is you don't want to wait until your glucose levels are low, because now you're already decreasing your performance. So if you're going to do a long workout, plan it out. Take your typically people love the sports drink because it doesn't make your stomach feel bad. Whereas if you stop and start eating bars or something like that, it digests slower. It doesn't get to you as fast, and may make you throw up.
Yeah, I found that when I teach cycle, and as an instructor, you're having to talk and motivate, and I like to do the full class. And Hydrate Plus is huge for me with that extra carbs. I don't find that I, am riding and then I dip down. Like, I'm able to sustain all the way through.
And Cindy, how long you're doing basically spinning there? Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. You're probably burning maybe 800, 900, 1,000 calories an hour. And in a bottle of Hydrate Plus, depending on how strong you make it, you're probably only consuming 100, 150 calories.
Right.
So you're still running a massive caloric deficit, which most people do want to do. But, don't scrimp. If you're trying to run a caloric deficit, if you're concerned about your weight, the time to worry about it is not during an anaerobic workout.
Right. Absolutely.
Or aerobic workout. Worst time ever to worry about it.
Yeah. Right. Besides that, I think one of the main concerns is also be sure you're always replenishing your electrolytes. Electrolytes are like really important, not just inside of the training, but actually after the training. So even right now, like I'm studying and I need to keep constantly taking the hydrate, because I know that it helped me. It replenished my electrolytes. It doesn't matter that I'm not working out that strong anymore, like these 8 hours, but still I know I need them like throughout all the rest of my day. So I think the key takeaway of what Cindy was saying is do not sacrifice electrolytes and performance for calories.
Yep.
Because I think that in the long run, what you want to do is feel good after the training, and electrolytes is a huge problem that a lot of athletes have, deficit in electrolytes.
Cool. Okay, so I have a question here. What advice do you give guys that are wanting to gain weight at the gym? And go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're trying to gain weight, typically, again, I've yet to see someone that says, I really want to get fat. Like so I'm guessing we're talking about muscle. Okay. So going back to, let me see if I can get to this slide back here. Where is it? This is how we build muscle, and so it's protein. You have to first stress your muscles. Okay. And then you have to consume protein. And I would consume protein at, immediately after, 2 hours after, 4 hours, 6 hours. Like you have to kind of constantly feed yourself. But the mechanism for building muscle is right here. So if you notice, carbohydrates want to store as fat or glycogen, protein wants to store as muscle. So unless you're trying to store fat, which I'm guessing we're not talking about, you need to be eating more muscle and probably lifting more weights or stressing yourself. Now, at different points in our life, our bodies act differently based on things like hormones. So a 14-year-old boy, by existing, is going to start increasing in muscle mass. That's a hormonal deal. So be aware that there are other things that interact in it. But in a normal environment, if you're not going through a weird hormonal change in your body, something like that, even if you are, this is actually still correct. Consume protein. exercise your muscles, okay, tax your muscles, stress them, consume protein, and you get into that building cycle.
Got it. Cool. All right. I have another question from Charles Granger. He has a teenage female soccer player who plays 4 to 6 days a week. What are your suggestions, and are there concerns for athletes of this age?
At that age, I'm not terribly concerned about, about taking proper supplements. I am a little bit concerned as you get younger because, again, prepubescent athletes tend to perform a little bit differently. With that being said, there's some strong foundational physiological things, but I believe that kids, first of all, we talk about supplementation. It supplements a good diet. It sure as heck doesn't replace it. So, with that being said, a female that age, I think you're fine. That I would strongly suggest starting out on the endurance line. Soccer players run about as much as runners do. Mm-hmm. And so they're burning through their energy supplies. One of the problems you're going to face is if you don't replenish those energy supplies, you can cause other problems. Like Ismael was saying, you're breaking down your body, you're not replenishing it. Now we can cause hormonal problems like cortisol, stuff like that. So I get a little concerned about people trying to starve their bodies. And so even if weight's an issue, I don't know what if we're worried about body comp, but even if it was, I would recommend the endurance line for a female soccer player, given the amount of running they're doing. Again, focus on the during and after. Focus, so hydrate plus during, that's your carbohydrate and electrolyte blend. And then the build plus after, that's a 3-to-1 carbohydrate to protein ratio to replenish your glycogen, along with giving you some protein to build some muscle.
That's great. Awesome. All right. Then I have for something like a boot camp, what do you recommend? And then also for like marathon and half marathon runners, obviously we're talking about two different exercises here. What are your thoughts on that? So, like a lot of people that are on this call do a burn boot camp type workout, which is obviously high intensity interval training, for shorter periods of time. What would you recommend for that?
Okay. So actually let's start on this slide and look at how many calories you're burning. That's something to always be cognizant of. I wouldn't say religiously worship it, but these are calories per hour here. So I would say a boot camp, oftentimes you're getting up toward that anaerobic level. So maybe you're at 750 to 800 calories an hour. So my wife's a member of Burn Boot Camp here in Colorado Springs. She goes, 5-6 times a week. It's 45 minutes, pretty hard. I feel comfortable saying she's burning 600 or 700 calories during that time. So that's an important thing to keep track of. Okay, what's she burning? Let's say she's in high aerobic to anaerobic consumption on our energy scale. She's burning through glycogen. She's not burning through a lot of fat, incidentally. And if you know my wife, there's not a lot there to begin with in terms of fat. After 2 months, she lost an inch out of her waist, and I was like, "Where the heck did that? How?" But she's really enjoying this type of workout, which I think a lot of people are now. But she's using basically glycogen and whatever she ate, before or during. So if we go back to our products here, a boot camp actually also has a reasonably high muscular component. So I'm not really comfortable giving someone in that situation. I'm actually totally comfortable giving them full strength hydrate plus. Okay. I'm totally comfortable if she wants to take 100 calories during that time and she's burning 700 calories, she is not going to get fat with that. In fact, what she's probably going to do if she consumes 100 calories of carbs, she's probably going to burn 150 more because she's working out harder. Okay. So that's the truth. My mom's got a doctorate in human nutrition. One of her sayings is that fat burns in the flame of carbohydrates when you're working out. And so I would say hydrate plus, but now let's go to the post-workout regimen. Here is where I would say is a classic example of someone who needs to blend the two products. I would use about 50% build and about 50% of build plus to get to somewhere near an even split, maybe slightly higher on the.
Oops.
Okay, I think we lost Eli.
Oh, yeah.
N-
Okay.
Nonetheless, pretty much I think where Eli was going is that mix between the Build and the Build Plus is really, really helpful for the type of boot camp workout. And then for marathon runners, what is the difference between the chew and the gels? Pretty much the difference is when you're running a marathon, you are when you're running a marathon or a half marathon, you're entering slowly that threshold that Eli told about. I'm sorry, I'm not having his slides to show. Nope. Well, we can use that. The one on the top, two more, the 4. There you go. This one. So pretty much when you are doing a training, not a training, a marathon, you go into the moderate running, and after a while, because of the distance, you kind of hit the hard interval running. So pretty much the chews and the ones that have the more carbohydrates will help you to keep running and replenish that energy. And the difference between like that and any other gels, I think it's pretty much like the carbohydrates that they have, the caffeine that they have, and eventually how much you can use them. And so pretty much in a marathon, you would like to have the chews in your hand, not especially because you're burning in that moment the carbs.
Oh, Eli's muted. Eli, you want to unmute? There you are. There you are.
Okay. So if I could also to try to bring this back up, my computer disconnected there. I had to relog on. So one of the things that's happening in a marathon is, you're up at that, high aerobic to anaerobic level. You start burning through, your glycogen, your consumed carbs. At a certain point, you're going to hit the wall. And what every marathon runner knows what that feels like, and it feels like you've hit the wall. That's why we call it that. That's what happens when you run out of glycogen. By consuming carbohydrates during your marathon run, the competition or the training, you extend the amount of time before you're going to hit the wall. Okay, and so that's very important. And you can, if you look at it, the longer I can stay in that high aerobic or anaerobic zone. Most marathon runners are probably in the high aerobic zone. We're probably not dealing with anaerobic for 2 hours, 2+ hours. But the longer that I can stay in that zone before I completely run out of glycogen, the faster I can run. Because as soon as I run out of glycogen, I'm going to fall down into that, moderate running to jogging kind of the high aerobic to, the lower part of the high aerobic or the low aerobic zone. So this is crucially important for a marathon runner to consume bioavailable carbohydrates during the workout or during the competition.
Awesome. I had another question. Is there a Shaklee product that you would recommend to substitute for the Build product that is dairy free?
Sure. You can use the Life Shake. I don't have it put in here. And in fact, that's sort of a good hack. If I pull this slide back up over here. In fact, most of our women's rowing team, we've had, I think, 13 gold medalist rowers now. A lot of them actually use the Life Shake, which is a plant-based protein. So we've got some soy-based products, plant-based products, and we got whey protein. Even though those are marketed sort of for different purposes, if you look at them, they're going to be a blend of carbohydrate and protein, which works very well for most people, especially in a CrossFit environment. So we do have options. This is our sports. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Ismael.
I have it. Actually, I'm using it right now. Amazing. I really like it.
Yeah. So it's marketed sort of as a meal replacement shake, but if you look at the carbohydrates and the proteins, it's a good blend.
So it has 20 grams proteins, which is pretty much what the Build has. And right now we have here 11 grams of carbohydrates.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like built.
Yep.
And so when you want to add more carbs, that's when you're adding your fruit and your bananas and that sort of thing. I mean, you just kind of add more carbs that way.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Or you can add more Build Plus. Build Plus is a great carbohydrate replenisher.
Yeah,
So,
I actually add. Go ahead.
For your marathon runners who are trying to do stuff ahead of time, it's sort of a mid-glycemic index product. You can take Build Plus, an hour out before doing a workout. If you really do want to try to add something ahead of time, you can actually take a product like that for, if you're going to do a hard cardiovascular workout and you do want some carbs in ahead of time and you're not going to eat a bagel or something, that's a good pre-product too.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know.
You don't want too much protein in early. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay. So go ahead, Ismael.
There's a question that somebody asked. It's, I think, Christy Schaefer, and said, what nutrients are you missing when your legs get cramped from running for at least over an hour? And how do you know how much hydrate to take while working out? I think that the second question answers the first one. Like everything that it's, or almost everything that is in the hydrate part in the electrolytes, it's what makes your legs cramp.
Mm-hmm.
It's the potassium, it's the sodium, it's the minerals that are inside of this blend, the ones that are missing. So that's why you get cramped. And about how do you know how much hydrate to take while working out? Honestly, I don't have like a straight answer, but I like to drink like a full bottle of hydrate while I'm working out.
I kind of have an answer for it. If you're feeling kind of worn down, other than the normal from the workout, it's probably nutritional.
Correct.
Okay. And I tell you, I can't tell you take 200 calories of it or 100 or 150. The best thing I can do is say, if you're feeling crampy and stuff, take some more of it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what wards off the cramps. And a lot of times people are so worried, they're calorie counting and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, this is not the place to calorie count. Get your electrolytes in, fuel up correctly. Because if you're cramping, you're going to not work out as hard and you're going to burn fewer calories. So again, getting people in that mindset of fueling your body correctly, typically afterwards also, it can take a couple days. So if you're having those symptoms, you're probably not taking enough. Mm-hmm. If you're not having the symptoms, you might be at the right level.
Yeah, I want to add, Lisa Wilson is on this call and she listened to you when you had talked to us this summer, Eli, and she literally took notes and listened to you like 3 times. And she on the chat actually said that her performance has by far exceeded her expectations on these products, but she literally has Build Plus ready to go right after her workout. So typically she does a 2-mile warm up, and then she'll do like a burn boot camp type class. And then sometimes she'll get back on the treadmill. But she's a former Ironman athlete and really wishes she would have had this line back then. But she's a huge believer. I mean, for sure. And her arms look amazing, by the way.
And I'll tell you, this is something that's so misunderstood. And I will tell you, once you dial in your nutrition, you're going to see huge impacts. I mean, Ismael was a classic example when Ismael and I sat down, whenever it was pretty far before the Olympics, and he had told me about his concerns because of food supply chain basically in Mexico. And this is actually such a big issue right now. We just had our world championships in Mexico and they sent out an advisory and said, hey, all competitors, we can't guarantee that the meat we're serving at the competition is not contaminated. So I went out with the Czech team a week before the competition and they were getting their own food put together to take from the US down to Mexico. So that was the environment Ismael was in. And when he started properly getting his protein put together, because that's where he was deficient, I remember you were up here for a training camp and we trained together quite a bit. And you were able to just really start taking off. And, we saw a huge improvement in your performance and it obviously led to that just amazing Olympic medal. So whether you're pursuing an Olympic medal like Ismael was, or whether you're pursuing a best time in a marathon, or just participating in a CrossFit competition, proper nutrition, I guarantee you, will assist your performance.
Absolutely.
Guys, I need to jump off the call. To everybody who wants to contact me, feel free to contact me. My social media, it's over there. My Facebook is Ismael Hernandez. You can find me. I'm friend with Eli. You can ask me if you have any questions, and I will try to help you with that. Thank you, Eli, for the invitation, for the presentation. Thank you, Cindy. It was wonderful, and thank you for all the attendees. I hope this was helpful for you, and just keep grinding, keep enjoying, and just keep loving life. This is it.
Go back to your
Thanks,
studying.
Ishmael.
You're still getting your master's degree.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Have a great
Ishmael.
night.
You
Okay?
too.
Take care.
I
Bye-bye.
can stay on a bit longer if you want to ask some more questions here.
Just a couple more. Okay, so Steve Cooper asked that he said he's a runner and he's been trying to run 5Ks within the 18-minute range. He usually peaks at low 20s or very high 19s. Any tips on making him faster?
I would. Yeah, this is a great one. I love this. Obviously, I was a running specialist. My 3K time, we were running 3Ks when I was competing, then changed when Ishmael was competing. I was about an 8:23K runner, so that was a 4.5 minute mile pace. So for 2 miles, so we were pretty light runners. Yeah. So the 5K was a little long. I think I was around 15 flat on that. So this is pretty much in my strike zone for stuff I like talking about. Most runners that I see are making one of a few mistakes. The first is that they may not be running enough. Okay. If you're peaked, consider adding more mileage to it. The second one is you might not be running, if you're running 45, 50 miles a week and you're still peaked, then you probably have an intensity problem. And regardless, you're probably, you're at the point where you're really a runner there. And you want to get into that 18 minutes. So now we're starting to get the 6-minute mile. I absolutely would make sure if you're not taking at least 200 calories an hour of carbohydrate drink while you're training, then you're probably not, you're not treating your body right. So the key there is, I think you probably need to stress your body more, and then you need to recover more. So it's kind of a common theme. Increase the stress, increase the recovery equals increased performance. If you increase the stress without the recovery, you don't get the benefit. If you increase the recovery without the stress, you're either wasting effort, or you put on weight because you're adding extra energy and the source is fat. So that's how I'd approach it. Increase the stress, increase the recovery.
Cool. Let's see here. At what percentage of max heart rate are you able to burn the most fat?
Okay, so that's one I like to kind of debunk again.
Okay.
In terms of, again, I was on this cardio machine and it says fat burning zone. Okay, from the straight up as an energy source, physiological, you're 55, 60%, you're probably burning the maximum percentage fat. The problem is you're just not burning that much of it. So what we want to do is generate a bigger caloric deficit, which comes from a higher intensity workout. We actually now know that higher intensity workouts, we're actually seeing better results on that. We don't know all the mechanisms. Some of that, there's some theories that maybe it's because you are, when you're working out at lower levels for longer, you're generating more cortisol. There's a lot of theories around that. I wish I could say we totally understood the mechanisms for this. I'm pretty comfortable saying at this point, we're pretty confident now from years of experience, higher intensity workouts develop a more robust weight loss. So if we're talking about weight loss, think higher intensity, think longer periods of time at higher intensity. If you're talking about the physiological academic answer of at what point are you burning more fat as a primary energy source, the answer is at a lower level. If you're changing your body comp and you want less fat in your body, burn more calories. And our bodies are amazing creatures. They're really amazing. And when you do high intensity workouts, I think one of the things that happens, this has not scientifically been proven, but I think it's a pretty sound theory. Our bodies adapt to what we're doing. That's why you don't see, these Kenyans that run 2-hour marathons that are big, enormous people, because their bodies have adapted. and you know, we're still learning how much our hormones interact and all these different components of our body. It's not a simple thing, but I can say again, if you want to lose weight and get skinnier, try higher intensity workouts, try working out for longer at higher intensity. And that will, you know, if that was the question, then the answer is do those workouts. You'll probably see body comp changes you like.
Got it. Okay. Someone just said, how often should a 13-year-old train to get faster for a 100-yard dash?
That's a toughie. You know, track's a sport that is a much later blooming sport. You know, if you haven't started swimming I started swimming when I was 7 and I was late. You know, swimming, you start at 5 or 6. I mean, it's that young. Track and field, I mean, we got athletes that started track in high school and they're elite level after college. I'm a big fan for those sort of sports. Don't push your kids too hard. Kids should have a blast while they're working out. And I'm not one of the ones to say, oh, don't keep score. Heck with that. The kids are keeping score. You keep score too. It's totally fine. But I'm also one to say, you know, when I was 7 years old, I joined the swim team and it took me 3 attempts. When I was 17 years old, I broke every city record in my hometown in my events. And I remember that day looking around, and there was nobody who had been there the day I started when I was 7. I had outlasted all of them. And I loved what I did. You know, when I was 13, I was still one of the worst swimmers on the swim team. So, you know, when it comes to a sport like that, I'm really more concerned about passion and about having fun. And you know what? If that 13-year-old just can't wait to get on the track every day, that's a great sign. Mm-hmm. And if they don't want to be on the track every day, that's also a great sign. Because a lot of the kids that were more talented than I was, man, they'd burned out. When they were 13, 14, 15, they burned out. And then I hit the afterburners, and I was the one who broke all the records.
Cool. That's awesome. All right. Well, I don't know. I know Carrie asked about mixing the build. I mean, I know people that mix build with coconut milk. She's saying water isn't ideal for her, but I mean, that's fine. Adding coconut milk, almond milk, any of that.
I use a natural milk. I used to think I was lactose intolerant. My brother's a physician, and one day he told me, he said, you know, hey, try all like raw milk, and I did, and I wasn't lactose intolerant, so I mix it with milk every day.
Okay.
By the way, I see a couple questions here I actually would like to hit. Someone asked, how long does it take for this to sort of kick in? The answer is probably within 2 to 3 days of when you start, when you get your nutrition aligned, you should actually feel a difference. And the beauty of this in sports is, like, if you're running, you're going to run faster and you're going to feel like you can run longer. You can't be fooled by it. So that was Christina Walsh asked, how long would it take to see results from these products? 3 to 5 days. You know, and it might take you a little longer than that to get it dialed in, but typically if you start on a Monday, by Wednesday or Thursday, you're going to be like, wow, I feel great. So that's pretty good. And then I see another one just came in about Energize, how soon before a workout? I recommend 15 to 30 minutes. I wouldn't do more than 30 minutes, but I think I wouldn't do closer than 15. Those are designed to be taken sort of in that window. What about bulking with protein intake post-workout? When you're repairing your muscles, are you also building to make bigger or just repair the teardown? When you feel the sore post-workout, does that mean you're not feeling correctly afterwards? Not necessarily. You can get sore for other reasons, but sore is just a sign that you're breaking down your muscles. The type of workout you did has a lot to do with whether or not you're building massive muscle or whether you're building leaner muscle. So if you look at athletes who do high levels of repetitive motion, tons of reps, they're going to have smaller muscles that are more defined. If you look at athletes that are lifting really heavy weights, they're going to have bigger muscles. They're bulkier. So again, our bodies respond to stress. It's amazing how that adapts. So if you want to lift heavy weights, your body's going to adapt to lifting heavy weights. And then we got one more down there. It says, can a 15-year-old take all these products? I feel pretty comfortable with 15-year-old taking them. The only product I'd read on the Energize label, but I don't think there's a problem with that. So check the label on that. I was actually, when I was 15, I started using Shaklee. I was buying what's now the Hydrate Plus and the Build Plus products. So I've been on for that long.
That's awesome.
And that was one of the things. Yeah, I was swimming 11 times a week, and I'd work on the side to buy my recovery products, and that made a big difference for me.
That's awesome.
So yeah, 15, you're good.
Cool. Well, I think that's about it. This was amazing. Great Q&A. Thanks to everybody who jumped on and asked some great questions. And Eli, you're always a vast knowledge base. I love that and all your experience. Loved having Ismael on tonight.
Yeah,
So,
it's always good to have an Olympic medalist jump in there. And for those of you who've been around Shaklee a while, expect to see more of him. I invited him on. I said, hey, I'm doing this webinar. Why don't you jump in? He's starting to work more on our sports products. So
it's awesome. Very good.
You'll probably work with him soon.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you soon in person, and look forward to sharing this with other folks that couldn't make it on tonight. So thanks again.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
You have a good night.
You too, Eli. Thanks.
All right,
bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.